Well, this is the video I waited a couple of days to make. It's my review, and it's not very long, of Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves. And it's intentionally not long, because there isn't a lot to talk about. So I'll be as brief as possible, and it's important that you stick around to the end, because I'm going to give a slightly adjusted score to this film from what I've said in live streams, and it comes upon reflection. So pay attention. Here we go. Chris Pine led this Dungeons & Dragons film. Kind of. I'm going to say it this way. Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves is a movie. That's right. Normally, when I try to say nice things about a film, that's not a good sign, at least for the end of the review. And like I said, I've adjusted my score. And we'll get there. But let's start with this. It's not all bad. There clearly was something to this. In fact, upon reflection, there was an opportunity for a lot more. And there were jokes that landed, which is rare nowadays, at least in the last couple of years, because everybody's trying to Marvel up, or Marvel humor up, or Josh Whedon up, or James Gunn up their projects. They want to have that smarmy reaction to a very bad situation. And everybody now is doing it rather poorly, and really, it's not landing with the audience. Now, oftentimes I'm going to say the film was in focus, as I suggested before, and it clearly was. In fact, visually, it's beautiful. There are amazing elements in this that quite surprised me. There were, of course, some cheap shortcuts that had to be taken. I mean, the film's budget was $150 million, which is at least $50 million less than anything that's made by the MCU these days. And if you're paying attention, much cheaper than anything, well, Lucasfilm is making overall. Now, the CGI in this film, top notch. Very, very good. And as I've said before, I only found one point in the film where anything looked blurred or muddy, and it's fine. It probably would go unnoticed by almost anybody else. And I have to tell you, it's a rare find when you see that kind of CGI being used. And much like I said for Shazam! Fury of the Gods, if you want to check that out, it's right there. When it comes to this film, the monsters are spectacular, wonderfully done, and at some points rather humorous. Like I said, the story had a lot of potential. There were many other choices that could have been made along the way. There was a lot of dialogue that I just found off-putting, which pulls me out of the film, and it may not do that to everybody else. We'll get to that in just a minute, but the story overall, beginning to end, there were great elements in there. It just needed something more. And of course, you're going to find all the intersectional or woke tropes that you're finding in a lot of film projects these days. And again, it's not a surprise. This film, I think, originally was put together back in 2018, 2019, but I could be wrong. A lot of modern politic garbage was going on back then, and we're still going to see projects that will reflect that. And if that's a turnoff for you, well, pay attention to the end of this video. Now, you're going to get, as I said, some bad tropes. Bad dad trope is clearly here, although somehow, in some ways, along the way, maybe it's less offensive. The woke trope that men are stupid, present all over the place. In fact, we've been demeaning men since, I don't know, the 1970s in television, when there was another movement afoot that was trying to demean men. And to me, after 50 years of sustaining this stuff, I'm just tired of it. Let's get back to, not demeaning each other that way, but hey, you do you. And of course, the famous woke trope out there nowadays is the girl is the key to everything. And you hear a lot of people talk about that particular trope in a lot of different ways. Well, in this film, it's out there. There's no denying it. And in a lot of ways, I mean, all of the women are required in this film, which wouldn't normally be a bad thing, but you could probably eliminate the dudes in this film, and with the exception of one, well, they may not be needed. There was a dumb plot ending. And again, this is another woke trope that comes into play. It's the power of youth. And if you really, really think about it, if you just really focus in on it, while that particular ending that I'm talking about is totally telegraphed from the very beginning of the film, it actually is kind of the heart of this whole project. It's completely by surprise at the end of the film, with no introduction and no prompted motivation. There's no dialogue to support what actually happens. And in other words, this is one of those moments where the plot needs this to happen, so it happens. Ultimately, it's because the film needed a save, and there was no need for it. It could have been resolved with some dialogue choices along the way. Not a lot needed to be changed in this film overall, however. I would say that it just needed another pass by somebody who's a talented script doctor, or perhaps an editor who could cleverly edit things in a way that would make it make more sense. You would definitely want somebody involved who wasn't some kind of woke zombie cultist member that really just wants to insert all of this stuff into the pop culture realm to try to create some form of influence, which is all the record number of flops has actually been attempting to do. Women can be anything. We've been saying that since the 70s, the original idea behind the feminist movement, which many ends was a good thing. Now with this latest branch of this extreme radical feminism, maybe it's not. So as I said, women can be anything, and Michelle Rodriguez plays a great Michelle Rodriguez in this film, and she is she's as good as Michelle Rodriguez in this film as she's been in any other. In fact, I would say this may be the best version of Michelle Rodriguez. Of course, that's not the name of her character. Her character is Holga. I've said in multiple various streams for a very long time that she is, Michelle Rodriguez, the very definition of typecast, specifically the typecast of Michelle Rodriguez, which is what's featured in this film. So expect her to only have emotions in a couple of very key places. There is a very strange cottage scene, which you'll know when you get to it. At the very, very end, you'll see some kind of emotion there as well. I should mention that she is the very competent muscle in the adventure party, and it's entirely believable. She's basically the muscle most of the time in the film, absent a different performance, which we'll get to in a second. Sophia Lillis is actually quite brilliant in this film as the character that she plays, which is the druid Doric. And I really have to tell you, very, very cool. And something unique, a redheaded female. Her tiefling can essentially change to natural creatures seamlessly. And again, this is where the CGI really pays off, and it was 100% entirely believable. The natural switches in one particular scene were brilliantly done, and at times the pull it out of the fire nature with which they utilize this character in the film is great. And again, notice I'm saying a lot of positive things here, which I bet you didn't expect based on my former ranking. We'll get to that at the end. I promise. Stick around. Returning to the fact that this is quite possibly the best CGI we've seen her in 5 or 6 years is really a big statement, in particular with her character, but it's not the only place where the CGI really pays off. There's one scene that I think you will really appreciate in the Underdark. The only significant male of any kind in this film is, of course, the Paladin character. Now, this Paladin character is Zank Yendar. And is it just kind of a coincidence, or maybe it just seems this way to me? It's very eerily similar to Chunk Uger over at TYT. I could be wrong. Anyway, regé-jean, sorry, I'm butchering the name. I don't know. I think that's right. Regé-jean plays the character as, well, a quality straight man. Very, very good. He's trying to charm the audience with the tactics that you could actually find over on the Charisma on Command channel on YouTube. And let me tell you, all of the best tips that are on that channel are utilized by this character in the film. And he does it very well. He's very much a gifted actor, I can't deny. And for his time with this adventure party, he is the best NPC you'll find throughout the entire film. I mean, this is a required encounter, and he guides them through it rather successfully. What a wonderful side quest is part of this film. Very similar to what a DM would force you through to kind of put you on the edge. And again, pull it out of the fire at the very end, which, well, is borderline spoiler. But no spoilers here. I won't do that to you. This really does a lot to serve only his particular character's development. It doesn't really seem to do a lot else other than at the end, which really is essentially Chris Pine's character coming up with the saving grace. Mentioning Chris Pine here, he does get top billing in the film, and deservedly so. I mean, he is the actor, he's the headliner of this particular movie. But it really didn't secure his character's overall journey at all. It didn't really help him in any way to be top billing. He's played for a fortunate idiot. He's played obviously as a bad dad, which we talked about at the beginning of the review, and he's played off as a consummate failure regularly, talking about it in fact in a one lengthy diatribe that bordered on like actually touching. I liken his character arc to a very slow trip through a school zone during school hours, of course, with a small speed bump at the end of his story, and that's it. And perhaps this wouldn't have been so flat if it didn't show up as the third ending of this film. And that's right, I've mentioned that a few times. There are 3 endings here, and the 3 ending points, any of them would have been a good end. I would have used the last one, to be fair. There is a very predictable end credit scene, which you have to wait quite a long time for. Is it worth it? I don't know. That scene may or may not be already available on YouTube and other video platforms, so you might be able to find it. As I said, no spoilers here, so you won't get that out of me. Now, there is another character here, and I haven't mentioned him yet. The other primary character is a sorcerer named Simon, and in this party, he's the one I have the most negative view of. The character that I'm talking about is just not well done or well written, and in no way does that reflect upon the actor, because his performance was very good with what he was given. That seems to be a theme here. I'm going to reiterate, actually, across the board, that all of the actors did a wonderful job in their portrayal of their characters, and that even includes Hugh Grant, who plays a very good Hugh Grant, a little bit more toned down Hugh Grant, but not bad. And again, one more time, the actors did the very best with what they were given. It's really just about what they were given. It needed a lot more polish, and this returns us to the very beginning of what I started talking about in this review. It needed somebody else to take another pass at this script. It needed an editor that was very much invested in giving us the best possible film, which meant leaving more on the cutting room floor. I think some of that probably lies at the foot of the director, but I could be wrong in that. And here's something that, again, is very surprising to me, and I actually led the video with it. This film actually grew on me over time after further reflection. It's been a couple of days now, and I can share this here because, well, if you can separate yourself from everything that I've said previously, from all the obvious intersectional woke political garbage, if you can separate yourself from several breaks or interruptions in your enjoyment because of the multiple asks that are required to be invested in this film, it may be worth a view. Perhaps not at a theater, maybe in the comfort of your own living room. That might probably be the best way to see it, and I'm not sure what the advantage would be to seeing it in a theater at this point, to be fair. Seems like an extra expense maybe people don't need to have. And my traditional rankings are usually done 1 to 5 stars. Well, seems pretty simplified, and I like it that way. 5, of course, is going to be the best, and 0 stars, well, would be the absolute worst. And there aren't that many 5-star films, and there aren't that many 0-star films out there, as far as I'm concerned. As I've said, my original score had to be reevaluated, the one that I've been giving in a lot of live stream. As of this time, as of this recording, when I'm talking to you right now, this film is set at 2.5 stars, which is higher than what I had been giving it. It's setting it firmly just below average, and that's really what this film is. It could have been more. Had I not been asked to sit through an overly long joke in a cemetery scene that, while initially very humorous and with a lot of potential, just became wearing with time, and you'll find that in the film. No spoilers. Had I not been asked to accept some subpar writing and some modern haircuts, I may have given this film an average score. Maybe it would have earned 3. Had many of the elements within not been so predictable or ensconced in some thinly veiled modernity, it may have had an average or better score. There really was much more here to work with that seemingly went intentionally ignored. And finally, it was just much too long for what it delivered. It suffered from an extra 20 minutes that really was unnecessary. It's a lot of reels. But those are my thoughts on the film, and of course, I suggest you wait, but if you have the extra coin and don't mind sitting through a just below average popcorn flick, this film may be for you. I suspect they want this to be part of a bigger thing, and if they do, they really need to do better on the next one. Of course, my argument has always been the reason that this film was made is to try to increase the value of E1, which Hasbro desperately wants to part with. They would like to rent out their IPs rather than produce their own material, and I can understand why. They're not good at it. They're not good at a lot of other things, but with that, I always ask, what do you think? Let me know in the comments section down below. And if this is the first time that you've ventured over to my channel, please hit the subscribe button down below. And if you enjoyed this video or didn't, hit the thumbs up button. That's the best. But if you didn't like it, I would say thanks for being here this long. Be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others, wash your hands, of course, because it is good hygiene. And until next time, bye.
For visiting today, be sure you're subscribed and hit that for alerts.
Yay!
Of course, like and share all of the videos that you can, as it helps with the algorithm. Have a great day.